thank you very much for tuning in to episode 1 of the season 2 version of the podcast of A Tale Continued, the podcast companion series that pairs with the original film series Crusader's Tale. We really appreciate you tuning in, and we're excited to share what is in store for season 2, and we hope you guys really, really love it. So, without further ado, for episode 1 of season 2 of Tale Continued, with me today is our guest star, Devan Millard, who plays Tannar Grimwald in Crusader's Tale. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I'll give you a quick second to introduce yourself to the viewers that maybe don't know yet, if they're tuning in fresh. So.
Yeah, all right. I've been helping out on many of these film projects, given time that I can. You know, life is crazy, but
true.
Everything has been a lot of fun, especially the first film that we did together that we pretty much did in 1.5 days.
True.
Like it was what, like 13 hours of filming, and then like just some small scenes elsewhere on a different day.
Pretty much, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
It was so much fun, and it was very addicting. So doing something like this is always it's given more perspective to how things work because of scheduling, props, all of that.
Yeah. And fun. It's been really fun. And a pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have everybody.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun being a part of.
It's good. Yeah, I mean, I guess let's have them here. Like, what is like let's hear just a little bit about you. What is your background with creative arts? Let's say.
So creative arts. Everybody knows the app TikTok. I actually started making videos before TikTok was TikTok, when it was called Musical.ly. That was before TikTok.
That's ages ago.
It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now.
Sure.
It was around 2018, 2019 when they switched to TikTok.
Okay.
So I started doing, creative videos that way, using the voiceovers and whatnot, funny sounds, and got into streaming a little bit of Grand Theft Auto RP. That put another perspective. I became a stickler for audio and whatnot. Plus, trying to think of the right word here.
Right.
But,
sure.
I've always been a conscientious person.
Sure.
So that helped a lot with a lot of the scenes that we did for continuity.
Yeah.
And all of that for the flow of how we wanted things to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of us were like that. A lot of us were like, well, would that really make sense?
And I'm glad that actually we have a lot of people on set who have been very thoughtful in that way, where whether it's a battle scene where they think about the continuity, or even just costuming pieces of, well, wait a second, this character should really have this prop, or X thing.
Or like, oh wait, we have to redo that scene because you weren't wearing this thing that you were wearing in the previous scene, and it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't be wearing it in this.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh god, that could be a pain sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you realize afterward. Mm-hmm. you did like 5 or 6 takes of it, and then somebody points out, weren't you wearing gloves?
Yeah. We had that in season 2, actually, in the battle scene at the end of the season, which viewers can look forward to a few episodes down the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the battle scene. We'll get into that later, but
yeah, we got a lot to. I mean, there's so much to chat about.
Now, so season 1 or episode 1 of season 2.
Episode 1. Yep, that's.
That was a very interesting day. It was fun, and it shows like raw emotion because all of us were freezing.
In the first scene.
Yeah. The very first scene. So scene 1.
Yeah.
Episode 1 of season 2. So,
Yo.
yeah, no, it was what, 40, 42 degrees, 45 degrees, something like that day.
Very rainy.
And it did rain. So a lot of the hardened expressions that you see was real.
Those are legit, yeah.
You know,
Where Tanner, this isn't spoiling anything because they've seen the episode by this point, but Tanner walks up on the battlefield and there's an unseen character that's saying, "Wait, please don't." Just the grimace on his face, slam that club into the dirt. That's pretty legit. I mean, the expression at least was.
It was fun to play that like hardened, like I
Yeah.
just watched a bunch of people try to kill each other.
Yeah, like a battle.
Like a battle, yes.
Yeah. I guess here's maybe a question that I wonder if viewers would appreciate. We so we originally had stock footage that we were going to use for an introductory battle because we just did not have the resources to film 2 battles in one season. We ended up removing the stock footage just due to copyright issues.
Right.
Just knowing that then it would shoot us in the foot as far as selling, and stuff like that. So the business mindset of things, but you don't see the battle of. Oh man, that's not Jaffa.
No.
His Jaffa was a year earlier. It's 1192 that the battle happens where the Third Crusade ends. But this battle that happens where King Richard the Lionheart and Saladin make peace. We don't see that battle. We just see the last strike with Tanner. So the question I wonder, what do you think does that work by kind of insinuating it as opposed to showing?
Yes. Based on the resources, like you said, as what we had available to us. I mean, the crew was small. Obviously, we had a cameraman. We had we had 2 camera people.
Yes.
We had the director, and then we had the cast.
Yeah.
And no one else. So scheduling was already a bit of an issue because people have busy lives. And
True.
so I think given what we could do with the resources we had, it shows that there was something that happened. The battle happened, and then talking about the battle shows, it wasn't an important selling point of the start of the season.
Sure. Okay. Does it almost seem more frightening or brutal if you just hear it?
like there could be some sounds, maybe some cinematics and whatnot, and then getting into the season because or ultimately the season isn't about the battles. It's not about the fighting or anything like that. It's more of the story plot that is playing out.
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I just, no, I appreciate where you're coming from on that. I mean, I ask because, that's something that I've gone back and forth on when script writing, for example, is, there's generally a good rule of show, don't tell, where you want to see it happen. But at the same time, there's like another rule that I learned in writing school where, sometimes if you leave it to the imagination, I had some professors that would say that that's almost more effective. Like that even letting the viewer imagine how someone dies on a field could be more brutal than seeing it.
Yep.
So that's kind of why I asked, because I wonder just sort of your take on that side of things.
Well, a lot of that could come from theater of the mind. I know a lot of people who know and play D&D are the same way.
True.
Everything that you're given is more or less theater of the mind. It's a description of an event, place, things, and scenario that you play out in your mind as you progress. So theater of the mind is a very important aspect of storytelling.
Sure.
So I think that works with what we tried to do this season.
Okay. Cool. I mean, I appreciate your perspective on that because it's just helpful to hear what different people think of that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many ways that you can attack that subject.
I mean, obviously, showing is more effective in a way that it captures, like, it captures the audience. Excuse me. It shows them something cool.
Yeah.
A lot of what we wanted to do was more story plot driven about why we're there, what's happening,
Yeah.
what needs to happen.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, because so much of season two is, well, season one was also very plot driven and character driven, I'd say,
Mhm.
but season two definitely continues that, where it's a lot of, yeah. I mean, there's still character growth that happens. I would think it's fair to say.
Mhm.
We get a lot more backstory about what's going on for sure in William's life. Um, and there's just so much world building that happens too, um, because we get to meet these historical figures who, in that way, we are definitely showing, which is really cool. Like, we get to meet King Richard, who we've heard about so far in the show,
Mhm.
and also Salahuddin, and later on in the show in future episodes here, Emperor Henry, and Duke Leopold.
Yep.
Oh, like all that stuff, all these historical figures that are coming in the show, which was its own fun challenge to
Mhm.
portray historical figures.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, actually, that's kind of something I am kind of curious about that from your perspective. Um, Tanner is a fictional character,
Yep.
but he's interacting with historical figures. So I guess how do you approach that where you get into the scene knowing that, let's say, 50% of the people involved are not real. Like,
Mhm.
I guess how do you make that
Like,
feel
not
real?
based on history.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so. For that, it's almost it makes sense because people remember the public figures, the king, the pope, the emperor, all of that. The people who served under them, such as like King Richard's right hand man, Tanner. Those names and those where they may be written down somewhere will more than likely fall to unknown history or anything like that. So going into that, I'm getting into character that way. I'm here to serve the king. I serve the king. I protect him. That's what I do.
Cool. I mean, it makes sense. I appreciate that because, I mean, it's an interesting point you bring up about how, yeah, I mean, there's so many names and faces that get lost to history, and um, I find that fascinating too because, and in a way, the show is telling that story, or because there could have been
Hmm.
characters that have had these sorts of experiences in the real historical record of the Crusades, but we would never know.
Hmm.
And even though this is fictional, it's hopefully pays homage to that.
Yep. And a lot of history is put onto, and what we've learned, possible credit taking, if because like
Fair
somebody
enough.
somebody does something awesome, or like they're forced a turning point in some historical event,
Sure.
but somebody else takes the credit for it because they were either in charge or um I don't know, more outranked, I guess,
Yeah,
in a way.
that's a good point. Actually, that yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense actually.
Hmm.
I hadn't even quite considered it that way when writing.
Hmm.
So that's cool.
So yeah, I mean, Tanner's name could have fallen by the wayside, but he
Yeah.
wasn't doing it to make a name for himself.
Right.
He was doing it to be of service to his king.
Yeah. I mean, he's very at least from the writer's room, as I've written scenes with the character, um, I'm sure you have your own perspective on it, but from my point of view, it's been a lot of, he's something of a misunderstood hero,
Mhm.
is the way that I would describe him, where he has noble actions and intentions and very strong sense of honor. Um, Even in situations where it's there's kind of like a no good guy scenario, but
Mm-hmm.
like like he still feels like someone that you want to root for, and that's kind of like a Han Solo kind
Yep.
where like Han Solo starts kind of as like the I well I don't, maybe I'm getting off on
He
a
starts
tangent.
as the criminal, but then
Yeah.
he becomes part of the hero's party. It's a lot like
Yeah.
going back to the reference of D&D.
Yeah.
I would classify Tanner as more lawful neutral.
Okay.
So he's more like he's righteous. He'll serve his king. He'll do what he
Yeah.
needs to do. But he's more on the do what's right
Sure.
and all that. So he'll follow orders, but like outside of that realm, he's more of a I'm gonna do what I need to do.
Yeah.
But in a way that's lawful.
Oh, it's definitely lawful
Mm-hmm.
for sure. No, that's wise. That makes sense. I mean, but it fits so well. I mean, to uh, I hope that doesn't sound like tooting our own horn too much, but I don't know. I think everyone's. I mean, the truth is everyone's done such an amazing job of acting the characters and um, bringing the story to life too. It's I mean, sure it's already on the page and we go film it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like everyone that actually gets into the costume and acts it out that
Mm-hmm.
actually.
There was a lot, especially during season 2 and even season 1 when we filmed season 1. There was a lot of like personal, like how the person who was portraying the character felt,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of ad lib.
Yeah.
There was a lot of impromptu uh, lines that got into the final cut
Sure.
just because it fit a little better, or it fit. It was just a small change because of the dynamic that had been set up that you had been
Yeah.
portraying. Um, and there was a lot of that. There was or the addition of lines um that made sense in the storytelling and
Yeah.
personal the character growth.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes you have to have that personal touch because even as you're trying to portray a line,
Hmm.
sometimes a certain line is just going to trip somebody up, even if it made sense in the script. I mean, I had to change some of mine on the fly just to get through them
Hmm.
because they were yeah, some of them look good on paper and then they just come out clunky. I mean,
And then take a look at like most like Hollywood films and whatnot. How much of that do you find out is actually ad libbed
true.
or just an impromptu? Let me try this.
Yeah, like I don't know if maybe if you had an example in mind, but I
An
mean,
example in mind would be most of Robin Williams' movies.
yeah,
Most of those
true.
are just him reacting, or um, Jim Carrey did a lot of that as
Oh
well.
yeah, true, true. Oh god, they're so good though.
Hmm.
It's
Did you know that
amazing.
his beautiful for like what was that? Yes Man? No, it wasn't Yes Man. It was
Ace Ventura?
well, there was Ace Ventura, but then there was what was that one where with Morgan Freeman,
Oh, Evan Almighty.
Bruce Almighty.
Oh yeah, Bruce Almighty.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah,
Bruce Almighty.
yeah.
That movie was there was a lot of ad libs all over
Okay,
the place.
makes sense. Yeah, see that. I mean, shoot. I mean, on that subject, shoot. I saw something the other day that Robin Williams improved so much on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Hmm.
They had an NC-17 cut of the film and a PG cut of the film.
Really.
Like, because he was all over the place with how much swearing or uh, just yeah, range of acting.
Yo,
So
I mean, have you seen some of his stand up? Like there were one of my favorites is his I think it's 2009
yeah,
Weapons of Self-Destruction.
I because I
Watching
have seen
that,
some. It's been a while though.
it's
Yeah,
like he used to make kids movies, and then
yeah,
he's talking about all these topics that are like, wow, like
yeah.
you see a different side of him.
I mean, rest in peace. I mean, like,
Hmm.
God, I wish Robin Williams was still around today because I imagine the roles he'd be doing now, and I mean, he brought so much joy to so many people's lives, and that's an inspiration as far as acting goes. So,
Absolutely.
geez. Do you have actors that help you kind of center yourself when you think about getting on set, like
Mhm.
kind of?
If I had to, like, if I had to choose, I would say someone like um wow, my I can picture him.
It's been a long week.
Yes, it has.
uh,
Played Wolverine. Why can I not?
oh, Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Why could I not think of that name?
When they're so famous that yeah,
That you just forget who they are. Yeah,
you just know their face. Yeah.
I'd say Hugh Jackman because of
Okay.
not only the wide array. Like obviously he was in. He's been in musicals, but he's been in. He's X-Men. All of this, like, more. I don't know. Emotional, but also like hardened
Yeah.
characters that he plays.
It's a good example, actually. I mean, he's well-liked actor too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and you can kind of learn bits and pieces from that. I mean, shoot, man, I'd have to say like, gosh, I mean, there's so many that
Mm-hmm.
that I take inspiration from, but um, I think I find myself as William at least. I find myself channeling a lot of a lot of energy out of specifically one character in the House of the Dragon show.
Okay,
Have you seen that one?
I have not yet.
Okay, it's the Game of Thrones spinoff.
Mm-hmm.
It's King Viserys,
Okay.
who's this kind-hearted but tortured soul, and does his duty, but really hates doing it, and generally has a heart that's too big for the world that he lives in. And in a lot of ways, I've tried to channel that with William, because I mean, so much of William's arc is that he really just, I mean, for sure, season one, his whole thing was, I just want to get the hell home and see my family. Like, that was, he could think of nothing else until he kind of realized along the way, like, well, hang on a second, you know, we've done some good deeds, and here I've met this amazing friend, and it's like, you know, it's proof that there can be brothers from other parts of the world and bridging divides and stuff. And then, of course, carrying that into season two, you know, he's more or less in episode one, we see a version of William who's kind of just accepted defeat.
Yep.
I mean,
He's accepted that he can't go home.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he's planning to stay there forever at this point, and you know, he still misses his family, and he talks about it, and he even says, you know, I've been thinking about maybe going home, but I don't think he's really serious about thinking it's going to work out. I think he knows that when he goes home, he's probably going to be marked for hanging. You know, so it's kind of like he's in this weird in between where he's caught, right? He kind of wants to go home, he kind of doesn't. He still wants to get his honor back, but he also feels like he has already kind of restored his honor because he spared lives when he could have taken. So there's kind of like the hero moment there, but yeah, it's you know, I've just tried to channel that energy into the character of, you know, when Tanner walks into the room and says, I need your help.
Mm-hmm.
William's like, you got the wrong guy, man. Like, this is, you know, I'm just trying to get by. Like, this is, like, this doesn't involve me. Like, it's like the reluctant knight that chafes at duty.
Mm-hmm. But ultimately, no, he's righteous enough to know that his home country is in danger when it comes to the king being taken, you know, all of that. So when Tanner shows up, it's a lot of, it feels like a lot of like, I need your help, and William like really weighing his options, but then ultimately settling on honor for England.
Yeah, I think I think that's fair. I mean, a lot of it is that because I mean, we go through this with other characters in the show as well, where the heroes party as they go on this quest to go rescue the king, you know, Tanner says, if you have other allies, now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course they're going to have to convince other allies to go fight with them, and there's definitely a lot of moments in the first couple episodes where Tanner is he's figuring out what's going to be convincing.
Mm-hmm.
And for each character that's different. Like for William, you mention his family, and that's kind of like the secret weapon. Like that's the trigger that's going to get William to snap out of his BS and like
Mm-hmm.
think straight.
And then,
versus others, it's more financially motivated, maybe.
mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Body is just, it seems like he would go along with it because he's friends with William, and
Piece of it.
and I guess I don't really know what, because he didn't really have to convince Fadi. Fadi was just like,
Yeah.
William's doing it, all right, I'm gonna do it too.
Because a lot of behind that is part of it is that they have this brotherly bond, where some of it is that Fadi chooses to go because, you know, he's like, well, I'm not gonna go let you die on your own. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing this, you got to have someone who's really skilled to be there with you. So
Yeah.
some of it is a little bit of pride, perhaps, of, you know, I can fight too, and just, you know, brotherly bond.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is also that in the course that he and Fadi have known each other, and in the context of how they know Tanner too, it's, you know, there's this Fadi almost sees it as a chance to build a better world, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like, the Crusaders ended, the war's over. For Fadi, that's a victory, because now his people are not under attack, and he has friends who he trusts from another part of the world, and it shows that it's possible to coexist.
Mm-hmm.
And Fadi sees that, and he, you know, he sees an opportunity to go on this quest, not necessarily so much for glory, but even more so just to maybe prove that, like, when you get these heroes that go off and do something great, that maybe it could show that there's a place for that coexistence.
Right, and obviously after the events of like the Crusades and whatnot, there would be a lot of animosity
Yeah.
between the two. So him showing that he's willing to go, at least in my mind's eye, my theater of the mind,
Yeah.
would be that he's another maybe small notion of it would be to kind of show, like, put down the animosity and
Yeah.
help out somebody in need, and
Yeah.
you know, maybe build relations that way, or like show like, hey, we're not bad people, we're just bad situation.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair way of putting it too, and I mean there is a moment later in the season in the final episode where, of course, William will tell the heroes that they fight alongside that, you know, their deeds won't be forgotten, and that when he does eventually, you know, go home, you know, he'll be sure to make sure that they're remembered. You know, that it's
Tell the tale of the epic journey that he's been
Yeah.
on since leaving home.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's so much that happens before then that I got to be careful not to overspoil it, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, holy crap, man. I mean, like episode 1, I mean, I personally think it starts off with that, you know, with that scene where it's kind of like the call to action.
Yep.
I think that's a strong start where it kind of kicks off the action.
Mm-hmm. And the conversation between King Richard and Tanner it was like a brotherly bond also.
Yeah.
Like what should we do?
Yeah. Well, King Richard is, I mean, when he asks Tanner, you know, he's really venting to Tanner at first, and then he says, you know, so what are your thoughts on this scenario? And yeah, I mean, he really is asking Tanner as a friend what he
Mhm.
should do as king, rather than, you know, the king simply saying this is what's going to happen. Shows that there's like there's always some kind of a guy in the room, or like a guy in the chair,
Yep.
where behind every great ruler there is some level of support.
Mm-hmm.
Always. I mean, it's a fact. It's like a vice president situation. A buddy that, you know, a CEO calls his buddy before
Mhm.
making a huge business merger.
Yeah, or there's a council that, you
Yeah.
know, you take ideas from everybody in the
Yeah.
room. Yeah, and Tanner being Richard's right-hand man,
Yeah.
trusts, maybe not, he trusts the judgment that he would have to help sway an option that might be playing on, and it shows, you know, because a lot of times rulers like that, especially in those times, were held in such high regard that that they could do no wrong.
True. I mean, they're seen as an extension of God.
Yes.
Like, literally.
There's such a high perspective of them.
Yeah.
Or like idolization.
Yeah.
That, you know, they don't think they can do wrong, and showing and actually having counselors and, or like the council, you know, advisors, all of that.
Yeah.
Shows a good morality behind the character too.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, in some ways, Tannar is the board of directors.
Yeah.
And in other ways, it's interesting too because, like, I mean, of course, King Richard would have had other, you know, more noble advisors. You know, there'd be, there'd be members of the clergy that would be traveling with the Crusaders as well, like bishops and stuff who would be sort of reminding him of his obligations to the church. And then there'd be noble lords who didn't fight, but more so drafted up the battle plans on paper, and then sent men like Tannar to actually go fight it.
Yeah.
Where I feel like Tannar to Richard, the reason why he respects him so much is Tannar's a link directly to the actual soldiers, like the middleman between king and soldiery, and also just the common people, because Tannar is of more or less common birth. I
think the backstory that we kind of built for him was that he was originally a blacksmith, wasn't he? Like some sort of crafter.
His father was a blacksmith, and then he learned how to be a blacksmith as a boy, but then chose to be a soldier instead. But like he knows, like he crafted his own armor,
right?
Like Tannar did.
Yep, that's where the leather comes from.
Yeah.
And like going to that as well. We've talked about it, but I wanted to talk about it here too.
Yeah.
Was him choosing leather armor over like metal armor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier to move in, and because he doesn't use a sword.
Yeah.
If he were to use a sword, he probably would have metal, but using a mace with a shield, it allows him to swing his arm a little bit harder. You need a little bit more force to hit somebody hard, and
yeah,
it was more personal preference to go with leather because where it is sturdy, it'll take a few hits. It's easier replaced than forging new armor.
True. Yeah.
So like he could repair it, patch it, anything like that. Whereas like with metal armor, you get a puncture in it, you have to replace it, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Replace the whole piece.
Well, and it's also I mean, there's something to be said too. Like, I mean, if you're going to be taking hits on the battlefield, granted, some like heavy armor can save a life, but if you're already taking hits, it's kind of like at a certain point, a hit's a hit. Like armor.
Well, yeah,
I
mean, he wore chainmail to protect from piercing the body.
Yeah.
The pauldron was more or less for like deflecting swords, like somebody goes for an overhand strike, and he might use the shield, or it might be on his pauldron side, so he can just kind of sidestep and let it brush off. Yeah. Or, you know, it would take a hit because he wore it on his off shield side. Yeah. So he had the shield in one hand to block, and then if he had to absolutely take a hit from a sword or something like that, it would get stuck in the leather, or it would hit the leather before anything else. And then with the chainmail for like arrows and all that, and he wore a metal helmet for that reason as well.
Especially for bludgeoning, if someone tries to hit him in the face with a mace, he just turns the helmet and glances off.
Yep.
I mean, or terrain, like if he takes a fall, the pauldron can kind of help cushion it.
Yep. Which, kind of funny too, if we're going to talk about props.
Yeah.
That helmet, the chin strap for it, it was not long enough.
Oh, shoot.
Which is why I never wore it. I never wore it like that, which is why it always just sat on top of my head.
You know, I guess, I mean, I knew that, but it's one of those things that when you're on set, certain things just get blacked out of the mind because you're so in the zone.
Yep, and then, I mean, I've got a big head, so Like there was no room for expanding the helmet so that
Sure.
it could fit me a little better, but it still worked and it was still comfortable enough to wear for visual purposes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's most important is, I mean, that was something that I've talked about before is that, of course, the costumes are not always going to be the most comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but I also want everyone to be as comfortable as we can be.
Right.
There have been some costume pieces where we've had to just say, okay, we can't wear this. Like, it looks historically accurate and it looks cool, but it's just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, if it's suffocating somebody in the chest, or if it's just so uncomfortable that the person portraying it is going to be so miserable doing it, I it's not worth it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? At a certain point, it's like go for accuracy, but also safety and comfort is extremely important.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also like
Yeah.
if you remember back to the fight scene that Will and Tanner had in season 1, episode 5,
Yeah. Yeah.
when he falls to the ground, his helmet actually falls off.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember that.
That on screen looks great because it's like, wow, he just hit him hard enough, or he threw him to the ground hard enough that his helmet flew off.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was
And
cool.
what's cool is every time we did that, I think we did what 5 or 6 takes of that.
There was a bunch, yeah.
Yeah, I mean we did the fight
Yeah.
scene, but then we had separate takes of me falling,
Yeah.
and doing the fall a couple of times. But every single time we did that, the helmet would kind of like roll away
Yeah.
in like a classic fashion, which I found amusing.
It was funny. I mean, it looked, in some ways it was comical, yeah. Like you've
Mhm.
got these big knights that are going toe to toe and then spinning like a top on the ground, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know.
The helmet just being like, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God. I mean, is it spoiling for me to say that maybe Tanner loses his helmet in season 2 as well?
No, it's not spoiling. It's more of a cliffhanger.
Okay, because there is a battle and
There is.
he does lose his helmet again.
Yeah.
It's maybe an Easter egg with each season or whatever. Like,
It's character accurate now.
yeah, well, so Zach, the cinematographer that we have, we have a cameo for him
Mhm.
later in the season,
Yep.
where he gets knocked out,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of a spoiler, but it's kind of a minor thing, so it's fine. But, uh, like he proposed to me that we should have like every point of shows that we do that he wants himself to have a cameo where he gets knocked out as a different character every time, and I think it'd be fun because it's like a little meme. It's an inside joke that I don't know. I think it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tanner's thing. I
I
guess.
mean, we have works and, like ideas for other stuff, and
Yeah.
that would be. I would like that. Just
Okay.
like a little Easter egg in each film that happens. Something happens.
Yeah.
If I play other characters, for
Yeah.
some reason his hat just falls off.
That'd be funny. I mean, well, Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Am I crazy, or am I remembering that in Sasquatch when Brian Bolt, the YouTube influencer, does his hat fall off when they hear the gunshot? Because I think it. No.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't. He freezes.
Oh, that's what it was. No, it's the actor Brian who played Steve the cameraman. His hat falls.
His hat fell off
That's
when
what it was.
he fell over. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you had to put it back on. That's what it was. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Oh my God, so fun. I love inside jokes like that.
That film was a lot of fun to make, especially the sneaking around in the ghillie suit.
Oh my God.
It's just so over the top.
But like that's the stuff that like YouTube influencers will do is they'll do this ridiculous stuff to get views and put themselves in weird scenarios, and it's totally making fun of that. Like in every way. Like I mean we turned it into a Mr. Beast parody, really.
Yeah, a little bit.
Does William have a what would his Easter egg be, or what would some of the other character Easter eggs be in season 2 or Crusaders in general, I guess?
Hmm. Well, I know what it would be out of, like, off screen. That's the chainmail.
Oh
That
my
chainmail
God.
was that had to have been so heavy.
It's very heavy. There is kind of a joke among my family that the reason I have back issues is because I've chosen to wear this insane armor because I didn't really have back issues before starting the series, and then it kind of started to creep in, and they've teased like, I wonder why. Yeah, it's probably no mystery.
Yeah, because that chainmail, like honestly, like helping you out of that, I can honestly say it's got to be
It's heavy.
30, 40, maybe even 50 pounds, and lugging
It's
that around all day, running, fighting,
yeah.
doing several takes of something. Yeah.
It's heavy. I mean, it's been worth it because it's helped tell the story. Um, so no regrets.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there were some days where when we would finish filming, I'd just be glad that we were going to go get food.
Yeah.
Like to be honest, like it was.
There was a lot of those days where it was just like, do I really want food? Am I hungry? I'm just so tired. I want to go to bed.
There were a couple days. I would say there were 2 days on set where I actually was a little bit concerned.
Yeah.
For myself, actually. I'm gonna be honest about that. When we filmed season 1, episode 5, I was a little concerned because I was starting to get overheated.
That's why we um advocated and basically forced you to like lay down, and, like sit down,
Yeah.
and drink water.
Yeah. I appreciate that you guys that we all look out for each other.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, I check in with everybody. How are you doing? But forget to check in with myself.
That's why we were there.
I appreciate that. I mean,
And yeah,
thank you.
like canonically, Tanner wears chainmail, but
Yeah.
because I had full sleeves
Yeah.
for his tunic,
Yeah.
we didn't need to show it, so he just had the chain hood.
And I also didn't want to make you.
It wouldn't have mattered
Yeah.
either way. I mean,
Right.
it would have been basically the same, but
True.
I mean, you wearing it because your tunic had sleeveless.
Yeah, it's so like you have to see it.
You have to see it, or else I don't know. It.
Looks weird.
Hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate that you guys are so conscientious about that. The other day that I would say that I was legitimately concerned was that it wasn't even the battle scene for season 2. I actually handled that pretty well.
It was decently cool that day. It
Yeah.
wasn't hot.
Yeah, it was no, it was the when we filmed basically 2 or 3 entire episodes worth of the heroes party.
Mhm.
The strategy session, the marching, the
Yes.
traveling,
Oh,
the
that
negotiation.
day was hot. That was a hot day. It was
Yeah.
like upper 80s that day.
And it was
No, it was in the 90s that day.
yeah, and it was July again. It's
Yeah.
those being outside in July. I think in the future, I think I've finally learned my lesson that we're probably gonna have to take a pause in July, like if we're gonna be outside.
Hmm.
Cause yeah, just it. I mean,
It was hot. Like you were
Yeah.
wearing the chainmail. I was wearing all black.
yeah.
And so those scenes that we did where we were in the woods were nice because
Yeah.
there was shade there, there was breeze actually.
Oh, God.
Hmm.
But not when we were doing the travel sequence through the open field.
No, that was like, okay, let's walk through this field, let's walk up this giant hill,
I know.
and then
Oh God.
wasn't there something like we had to do it again because of, or there was some reason why we had to reshoot that. I think it was because we got the walking and we had to go back because we were going to set up the drone.
Yeah.
And that's what that's why we had to do up that hill twice.
Well, the worst part, even the hill for sure. But then it was like after an entire day of filming, and then it was like 6 o'clock, and we still had one more scene,
Hmm.
and the sun was peaking over the woods to a point where it was actually even hotter at 6 than it was at noon.
Hmm.
As crazy as that sounds, that was the hardest part of the day. Was right at the end, with the sun in our eyes.
When we were down by the pond.
Yeah, and like
Mhm.
it was muggy and buggy and
Yeah. I mean, there was more of a little bit more of a breeze out there,
yeah,
and
true.
yeah, with the sun being like that, it was hotter because the hottest point of the day is never noon. It's actually more or less heated up.
Yeah.
And I think there's science behind that. I'm not a scientist. I don't know much about climate or weather or anything like that. So
Same here.
so I don't know, but that's what it always seems like to me, because when I used to work in
Yeah.
a factory, it was always when I worked second shift. I'd get there about 4, and it was just a lot hotter than it was when I left for work around 2.
Well, even like it's the same thing as like in the middle of the night. So like in a desert, for example, it's sandy and the sun beats down all day and it gets really hot, heats up the grains of sand, and then at the middle of the night, the desert is so freezing that it's like people can get sick of being cold in the desert, which you wouldn't think of so near to the equator even, but in the Sahara, that's a real thing.
And it's a lot like how brick buildings work.
Yeah.
Brick buildings, during the daytime, the bricks heat up and then they hold that heat, and then overnight it slowly dissipates that heat, but it retains it.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense actually. Why, I mean, no wonder why every house was made of brick in the medieval era.
Yep.
Because they didn't have space heaters or furnaces like we have here. That my cat is enjoying the space heater next to me.
Yeah, and that's also the reason why like the windows that they used to have were the way that they were. Like nowadays, like these actually. These ones, viewers can't see them, but they're really tall windows, and I'm sure that the top of that used to come down, because those look like they've been replaced sometime. But they would open up both sides because cooler air would come in, and then hot air always rises, right?
True.
So the hot air would escape through the tops of the windows, and it was almost like a cycling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shoot, man, that's literally how air conditioning works. I guess that makes sense. Like, you just cycle it out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. That no, that's it's good stuff. I can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of historical architecture that makes sense.
Oh, and even like I mean, this is a bit of a I mean, it's kind of a subject change, I guess, but with the whole context of the show, what we've tried to do, I mean, we try pretty hard to make it feel historically accurate as well as we can, between accenting with the characters and just descriptions of like historical events that are occurring at that time, or costuming, or places that generally don't have modern structures, of course.
Or signs.
Yeah. Well,
that was a big thing during the whole filming of both seasons.
Yeah.
Was,
oh god.
Oh, is this fence in the way? This metal chain link fence that wouldn't have been in the Middle Ages?
There are some situations where it was unavoidable, though.
Yeah.
Later in the season 2, there is a moment where there are some signages that do pop up, and in some ways, like if you're going to shoot on the location that looks good, you almost have to like digitally remove it. But I guess a creative decision, we thought to just leave it.
Well, because most of the signs because we filmed at a lot of parks.
Yeah.
A lot of the signs that we had there were made of wood. So it's not outside the realm of realism to have signs like that.
Well, and that's why we left it, because it's like, you can't see the writing. You just see that there's a sign. Could be another language. I mean, we figure, we want to digitally remove it. Nah. Versus, like, a difference would be at the church that we filmed at. Well, we did digitally remove the exit fire signs. We did do that, because, of course, that's...
What is this, witchcraft?
Yeah, like, there was a fire extinguisher in one of the shots or something, like... Oh my god, that was... Zach and I had a laugh about that. We were just like, what's that? Oh, shoot.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Because, that's a lot of things that you don't...
Yeah.
Like, really look for.
Yeah.
A lot of times, because... Like, you're focused on the scene, you're focused on the dialogue, the placement of the actors, all of that, and then all of a sudden you go to post, like the post editing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
Whoops.
Well, we've had a bunch of those moments with for sure with this project and others, of course, but mean, some of them can be kind of fun. I mean, it's
Like what was the Wizard of Oz or something like that? Or there was something where somebody had like a Diet Coke
oh yeah, um,
or something like that. There was like a can of something.
there's so many movies where that's happened.
Mhm.
I mean, Game of Thrones had a coffee cup in one of the shots.
That's what it was Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It was a coffee cup.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many movies where it's happened though. I mean, you could probably pick out a dozen movies where it's probably happened. I know I've heard of examples too. Like I mean, goofs like that. Like, I will say this that, God, I really hope this does not demonetize us or something by even saying the name. But like Amazon Prime, when you watch movies on there, uh, they have bloopers descriptions that
Mhm.
come on top of like the subtitles that says here's a mistake they made during filming, like this prop shows up when it shouldn't. Like
Mhm.
I like reading those because it helps me think about that excuse me, helps me think of that type of stuff where for our own stuff
Mhm.
to watch out for.
Yep.
I mean,
And you always got to be conscientious of that, but it always slips through. There's always something.
yeah,
Like you can have the best camera angles, but
yeah,
it's very hard when you have stuff like fire exit signs or fire extinguishers or like more modern day stuff when you're
Yeah.
trying to film a historic story
yeah,
that just all of a sudden you can have all the camera angles, but like you go for a pan shot
yeah,
and there's a fire exit sign, or there's
Yeah.
just a person standing in the background in blue jeans and a t-shirt.
The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian.
He actually got his own character on Wikipedia.
Really?
Yeah, like as like a legit canon character. Like he was, oh my god, it's like I love stuff like there's so many Easter eggs with movies. I mean that's really half the fun of it is
Mhm. Well, I know that there was a couple of times during season 2 where we shot something and then Zach was like, "Oh, I need you guys to move. You're in the shot." And I always picture how funny that would be to see on camera.
oh
I'm
yeah.
like, these characters are definitely not where they're supposed to be. Like they were just over there, or they're not even in the story yet. And then you just see them peeking out behind a rock or something.
Yeah. Well, there was one in the season 2 episode 1 with the rainy day scene on the battlefield,
Hmm.
with the wooden walls in the background. There were a couple shots that we had to very carefully make sure that we didn't include in the final cut because there was one shot where you and King Richard are walking, and I think I walk into the frame because I was trying to check on the camera to make sure that we had the umbrella over it.
Mhm.
Of course, it didn't even matter because the camera still got rained on. Busted a camera, had to replace it because rainy day.
Mhm.
But like, like stuff like that, or
Like, wait, William, you're not here.
yeah, like, you just see Brad walking.
Why are you wearing a trench coat?
Right, like, I'm sitting there with a raincoat, trench coat, tennis shoes, and it's like, wow, he really did fall off the deep end after he got banished. Like, or there's like one shot where I think I walk in, answering a phone call or some dumb
Mhm.
stuff like that, like taking a call or,
Yeah, I know the battle scene because of where we were, which is gorgeous, by the way.
it was a nice park.
I loved that filming there.
Same.
It's we were doing a couple of the shots, and in the background was like some of the characters that were supposed to be fighting somewhere else.
Oh yeah, well we didn't have him in the background because it was a safety issue. Because
Mhm.
like we wanted to have all the characters all fighting simultaneously, but we couldn't safely do it because it's enough to manage a few characters swinging swords at once,
You know.
and that requires all of our attention with the stunt crew to make sure that we're doing it safely.
Yep.
But then like if you have the other characters doing it in the background, it's doing it in the foreground, our eyes in the back of our heads don't work, so it's like yeah, we did kind of have to make that decision, which
Hmm.
yeah, I mean it's noticeable if
I mean,
people really look.
Yeah, the only scene that there was like multiple things going on, which it wasn't even two fights. It was I almost went into it. But
I feel like we should maybe. Oh god, because we might spoil it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I want to talk about it, but
I do too. Like, yeah, no, that's spoilers. So we're gonna move past that.
Thank you. I mean, oh gosh. Well, you know what?
I will say it was the shield part.
Okay, yeah, that's. Well, I think it's fair to say that there's two characters. No, there's three characters, in which there's there's two different 2v1s.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a good way to put it. There's two different incidents of two characters attacking one character. Maybe that's the best way to put it. No, there's three. There's three 2v1s going on. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yeah.
Well, there was a 2v1. Well, technically a 1v1 that turned into a 2v1.
Kind of, yeah.
And then a 1v1 that did turn into a 2v1, and then a 2v1. Yeah, there was a lot that happened.
This probably sounds so confusing for it'll make sense if you tell you what, viewers, if you want to watch episode 5 and then come back to this first podcast, it's gonna make sense. Like you'll know what you'll get why we're dancing around it, because yeah, I mean I appreciate
It was very well shot too.
Did a good job, and yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun to shoot. And,
episode 1 was still the food scene, right?
That was, yep. Okay. That was where.
Yeah, let's move back to that before we're out of time.
About 5 minutes here.
Yeah.
Because Tanner shows up and he eats all the food.
Yeah, he kind of digs in. William's like, well, here, they'd already eaten some of it. He didn't just show up and be like, 9.
It was offered.
It was offered, yeah.
So it wasn't that he claimed it, he was given.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of those scenes, it was hot that day. Well, it wasn't hot, it was very humid.
Yeah.
It was very humid that day.
It was a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, it was very hot and humid. I think it was like upper 80s.
Oh, and it was also in like a swamp.
Yes.
So like there's bugs.
Yeah. But like the natural spring, I think we got some B-roll of that was coming out of that was so cool.
Yeah.
And
it's cool.
Doing those lines the way we did with the shots that we did was really cool because it gave us there was a lot of dialogue.
Oh god, yeah.
There was a lot of dialogue.
Yo.
And being able to like not actually have like you'd have reactionary shots rather than like shots of you talking. I remember like there was times I'd take a bite of the apple, or like I think I had apple in my mouth from a bite, so that way we could do multiple scenes, so that way it would make sense. Or like all of a sudden it's like that apple has 6 bites in it and it had 5 bites.
It gets technical.
That type of technicality, but. Yeah, being able to have the script on the ground in front of me. Yeah. And kind of talk towards the camera or the boom arm that we had while reading the lines really helped because me personally,
it did help.
Dialogue is very hard. Especially like you could read the script multiple times. Yeah. And then the action gets called and then you're like
that's the issue is like we freeze up.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what it's like because I had my own moment later in the season where I knew the lines, I'd rehearse them on my own and with others, and we get to set and we push record, and suddenly I couldn't remember. It was stage fright, I guess, but it was definitely helpful, and I was glad we could shoot it that way because some of it too is really Tanner's following William to action, and William's kind of wrestling with that and sort of getting hyped up and.
And seeing the state that Tanner was in, because Tanner, I think in the story, had been traveling for weeks, right?
Yeah, easily, because he traveled all the way back from Aquileia, which is, I think, eastern Italy, southern Austria, in that region, right? Like, in Central Europe, all the way back to Arabia. It's weeks.
And, yeah, he obviously ran out of food, so that's why he was so hungry, and...
Digs right in.
So...
Yeah.
Like being able to portray like going from when you see him in season 1, episode 5, he's this strong like warrior.
Oh yeah.
And then in the first episode of season 2, he's more or less like, I need your help. I'm also on the verge of death.
Yeah. I mean, he's come off like he was the lone survivor of an ambush, with the exception of King Richard. But like all the other knights that they traveled with were just slaughtered, and the only reason Tanner didn't die in that fight is because Richard basically convinced him, no, you have to go get help. Tanner probably would have chosen to go down fighting, unless if it was a direct order from me. That's the only realistically.
I will die for you, but I will also follow your orders.
Exactly. Yeah. I think. Well, for Tanner, I imagine, from the writing standpoint at least, it's very hard for him to ask for help.
Yep.
That's not what he would want to do. But if he's gonna ask someone for help, it would have to be someone that he would see as like an opponent that he respects, which is why he seeks out William, is because
that and both being Englishmen.
Yeah, that too. There's that bond there, and also that they have this kind of ragtag group a little bit, where they don't look like a standing army. They just look like bandits a little bit, and that's more, in some ways, more likely to succeed with this grand quest of trying to rescue the king, because he won't see him coming.
That actually, yeah, with what happens, there was more like rogue work.
Yeah.
Than there was in the first season was more like knights and battle and fighting, but in season 2 it's more discreet, more stealthy.
It's like a CIA mission as opposed to the battle itself. Yeah. I had a lot of fun exploring that with everybody, because it does show a different side of the characters, and we get new costumes, which is exciting, and we see a depth of character where, you know, they just show that they have more range, I guess. I appreciated that.
I really liked the scene, the footage and the scenery of like when we weren't in armor. I'll put it that way. So that way there's not really too many spoilers. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. There's a scene where William and Tanner have a very candid discussion where, again, more or less, William says, I have all these regrets about everything we did during the war in the Holy Land. Like, I feel guilty about the people that we killed in the battles. Tanner's like, well, yeah, we try to forget, but we're here now,
Do what you can to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very nice character discussion. I think viewers will like it. I know. So we are. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you coming on. I mean, this has been an amazing chat.
Did we cover everything? Or just like enough?
Oh, I mean, we definitely hit all the points that I like, the suggested ideas of things that might have been cool, and then some, like easily.
We went off on several tangents, several side explanations and discussions, which is pretty good for a podcast.
I mean, I appreciate it because it's fun to talk, and hopefully the listeners appreciate it too. I mean, we really want to give them a chance to just learn more about the show. I mean, in case they're interested. I mean, that being said, thank you very much to the listeners who are tuning in. Thank you for your interest in the show, and we are very, very excited to have you see what's in store for season 2 and beyond, because there is more coming. Absolutely. So yeah, do stay tuned. Thank you for tuning into the podcast, and yeah, I guess without further ado, we'll outro here and keep an eye out for what's to come, because yeah, it's gonna get very interesting this season, and there's a lot of suspense coming. So all right, with that, thank you for tuning in. Take care.
See you later.